Shalom, my friends. If you're lonely right now, if you're sleeping in an empty bed, if you're scrolling through other people's relationships while yours feels non-existent, if you're watching couples hold hands and feeling a deep ache in your chest, I need you to know something that might hurt to hear. Your loneliness is not because you haven't found the right person. It's not because you're unlucky. It's not because the dating market is broken or because everyone in your city is emotionally unavailable. Your loneliness is a signal. It's your life trying to tell you something crucial about who you are and who you're becoming. And most people never listen to that signal. They just keep doing the same things, dating the same types of people, repeating the same patterns, and wondering why nothing changes. But what if I told you that the person who's preventing you from having deep, meaningful, lasting love is you? What if the reason you're alone is not because there's something wrong with you, but because there's something about how you're approaching relationships that's fundamentally broken? The hardest truth about loneliness in modern America is this. You could be surrounded by 10,000 potential partners on your phone right now, and you would still be alone. Because loneliness isn't actually about the absence of another person. Loneliness is about the absence of genuine connection. It's about feeling invisible, misunderstood, and unsafe with the people around you. And here's what's terrifying. Most people are creating their own loneliness without even realizing it. They're pushing people away with invisible walls. They're sabotaging relationships before they can get hurt. They're choosing people they can't really connect with so that they have a ready-made excuse for why the relationship can't work. They're protecting themselves from intimacy so skillfully that they end up completely alone, and then they blame the other person, the timing, the circumstances, anything except themselves. But the moment you start taking responsibility for your loneliness, everything changes. Because if you are creating your loneliness, then you have the power to create connection. In the next 7 sections, I'm going to reveal the exact patterns that are keeping you alone and preventing real love from entering your life. Some of these will feel harsh. Some will feel true in a way that makes you want to shut this video off. But if you stay with me, on the other side of this discomfort is the possibility of deep, real, lasting connection. Not superficial dating app matches, not shallow relationships based on physical attraction, real intimacy, real partnership, real love. The kind of love that people spend their entire lives searching for, but most never actually find, because they're not willing to look at the patterns that are blocking it. This is your moment to look. This is your opportunity to understand why you're alone, and more importantly, what you need to do to stop being alone. Let's go deeper. The first pattern keeping you alone is that you have built invisible walls around yourself so skillfully that you don't even know they're there. These walls were built for a reason. They protected you from pain. At some point in your life, you were hurt. You were rejected. You were abandoned. You were criticized. You were betrayed. And your nervous system created these walls to ensure that would never happen again. The problem is that walls work both ways. They keep pain out, but they also keep love in. They keep people from getting close enough to hurt you, but they also keep people from getting close enough to love you. And you've become so skilled at maintaining these walls that you've built an entire identity around them. You're the independent one, the strong one, the one who doesn't need anyone, the one who's fine on their own. And maybe you are fine on your own. But being fine on your own is not the same as being connected to someone. Being fine on your own is not the same as having someone choose you every single day, despite seeing all your flaws. Here's how these walls show up. When someone tries to get close, you deflect with humor. When someone asks personal questions, you give surface-level answers. When someone expresses feelings for you, you feel anxious and pull away. When someone wants to plan a future together, you find reasons to sabotage it. When someone is vulnerable with you, you stay guarded. You might not even realize you're doing this. It's so automatic that it feels like your normal personality. But what you're actually doing is systematically pushing away everyone who could potentially love you. You're protecting yourself so well that nobody can get in. And the tragic part is that you wonder why you're alone. You think it's because you haven't met the right person. But the right person could be standing in front of you, and you would push them away because your walls would automatically go up. The walls kept you safe from pain, but now they're keeping you imprisoned in loneliness. The way to break this pattern is to become aware of your walls and start deliberately taking them down. Not all at once, that would be dangerous, but deliberately. When you notice yourself deflecting, stop. Answer the question genuinely. When you notice yourself pulling away from someone who's trying to get close, pause. Let them stay close. When someone is vulnerable with you, resist the urge to minimize or fix it. Just be present. Just listen. Just let them be seen. These seem like small things, but they're revolutionary because you're literally retraining your nervous system to understand that closeness doesn't have to mean pain, that vulnerability doesn't lead to abandonment, that letting someone in doesn't mean losing yourself. Every time you take down a brick in that wall, you're making it possible for real connection to enter. And real connection is what you actually want. You don't want to be alone. You built walls because being alone seemed safer than the risk of connection. But the cost of that safety is exactly what you're experiencing: loneliness. The second pattern that's keeping you alone is avoidant attachment. And if this describes you, it's going to feel like I'm looking directly into your soul. Avoidant attachment means that the moment a relationship starts to get real, the moment things move from surface-level dating into actual emotional intimacy, something inside you panics. And your survival response is to run. You might run physically. You ghost. You break up suddenly. You move cities. Or you might run emotionally. You shut down. You become cold. You pick fights. Or you might run relationally. You start looking at other people. You start questioning the relationship. You start finding reasons why this person isn't right for you. What's happening at a neurological level is that your nervous system is experiencing intimacy as a threat. Not consciously. You don't think intimacy is threatening. But your body is literally going into fight or flight mode when someone tries to get close to you. And you interpret that physiological panic as evidence that something is wrong with the relationship, when actually something is wrong with your attachment system. Here's the cruel mechanism. When you were young, there was either a caregiver who was too distant, too critical, too unreliable, or some combination of these. So you learned, if I need people, I get hurt. If I depend on people, they disappoint me. If I let people in, they leave me. Therefore, the safest strategy is to stay independent and never need anyone. This strategy kept you emotionally safe as a child. It was survival. But now that you're an adult, this same strategy is preventing you from having what you actually want, which is someone who chooses you and stays with you. But every time someone tries to stay, your system panics and you make them leave. So you end up with a pattern where you either choose people who are unavailable, so you never have to deal with real intimacy, or you sabotage every relationship that starts to get real. And then you collect evidence that I'm just not a relationship person, or I keep attracting the wrong people. But the pattern is you. You're the constant in all of these failed relationships. The reversal of avoidant attachment requires something terrifying. You have to start staying in relationships past the point where you want to run. Not in toxic situations. I'm not telling you to stay with someone who's abusive. But in healthy relationships with someone who's available and trying, you have to learn to sit with the discomfort of intimacy without bolting. When you feel the urge to run, you stay. When you want to shut down, you open up. When you want to create distance, you move closer. You're literally retraining your nervous system to understand that intimacy doesn't lead to abandonment, that letting someone see you doesn't lead to rejection, that needing someone doesn't make you weak. This is uncomfortable work. It will feel like you're going against your survival instincts. But on the other side of that discomfort is the relationship you've been looking for your entire life. The person who stays because you let them stay. The partnership that deepens instead of ending. The love that actually lasts. But you have to be willing to override your avoidant attachment system to get there. The third pattern keeping you alone is that you have impossible standards for the person you're willing to love, and you don't even realize it. This person needs to be attractive, but not too attractive because then they'd be arrogant. They need to be successful, but not too successful because then they'd be too focused on work. They need to be emotionally available, but also independent. They need to be like your dad, but nothing like your dad. They need to like the same movies you like, the same music, the same food, the same travel style. They need to have the same political views, the same spiritual beliefs, the same family structure, the same 5-year plan. They need to be mentally and emotionally perfect without any baggage, without any flaws, without any need for growth. They need to complete you while maintaining their own identity. They need to be spontaneous but also reliable. They need to be confident but also humble. And when you find someone who meets 90% of these criteria, you focus on the 10% they don't meet, and you either reject them or you accept them while secretly resenting them for not being perfect. Here's the painful truth. Perfect doesn't exist. And here's the more painful truth. If you're waiting for perfect, you're going to die alone. Not because perfect people don't exist, they do, but because perfect people are also waiting for perfect, so they're not going to choose someone who's as broken and demanding as you are. Real relationships are built between two imperfect people who are willing to accept each other's imperfection and work toward growth together, not in spite of each other's flaws, but including each other's flaws. Your person doesn't need to be perfect, they need to be willing to show up, willing to try, willing to communicate, willing to work through hard things, willing to keep choosing you even when you're difficult. But you'll never know if someone is willing because you're too busy measuring them against an impossible checklist, and anyone who doesn't meet the checklist, you dismiss. So you end up alone, waiting for a person who doesn't exist while rejecting real people who are standing right in front of you. Here's the shift that changes everything. Start dating people who are 70% compatible with your core values instead of waiting for 100% match. Notice what happens. Notice how you grow. Notice how they challenge you in ways that actually make you better. Notice how their differences from you are actually their strengths, not their weaknesses. Notice how real love doesn't mean finding someone who's identical to you. It means finding someone who complements you. Someone whose weaknesses are your strengths and whose strengths are your weaknesses. Someone who makes you better just by existing in your life. This doesn't mean settling. It means being realistic about what real partnership looks like. You don't need someone who's 100% compatible with an imaginary perfect checklist. You need someone who's real, who's trying, who's imperfect, and who chooses you anyway. That person exists. But you'll only find them if you lower your impossible standards and start appreciating the very real, very flawed, very beautiful person in front of you. The fourth pattern that's keeping you alone is being a people pleaser in relationships. This looks different from the outside than the avoidant pattern, but it's actually the opposite end of the same spectrum of dysfunction. Where the avoidant person runs when it gets real, the people pleaser stays and morphs themselves into whatever shape they think the other person needs. You abandon your own preferences to match theirs. You pretend to like things you don't like. You suppress your opinions so you don't create conflict. You apologize for things that aren't your fault. You take responsibility for their emotions. You make yourself smaller, quieter, less threatening. You essentially disappear in order to keep the relationship intact. And here's the tragic part. The person you're trying to keep by disappearing will never actually see you. They'll fall in love with the version of you that you've created, which is a version of you that doesn't exist. And when your mask eventually slips, and it always does, they leave you. Not because you're unlovable, but because they were never actually in love with you. They were in love with the fantasy version you created. The mechanism behind people-pleasing is fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of conflict, fear of being seen and rejected for who you actually are. So you try to prevent abandonment by being whatever they want. You try to prevent conflict by agreeing with everything. You try to prevent rejection by not showing your real self. But what you're actually doing is guaranteeing the thing you fear most, abandonment. Because here's the paradox. The moment someone is attracted to the fake version of you, they're set up to leave as soon as the real version of you shows up. Or you stay in the relationship feeling invisible and resentful because you've sacrificed your entire self in service to keeping them happy. And they feel the resentment and the distance and the lack of authenticity, so they leave anyway. So you lose either way. The people pleaser stays in relationships but remains alone because nobody is actually in relationship with the real you. You're in relationship with your performance. Here's how to break this pattern. Start being willing to be rejected for who you actually are instead of accepted for who you're pretending to be. This is terrifying, but it's the only path to real connection. Express your real opinion even if it's different from theirs. Do the things you actually like doing instead of the things you think they want you to like. Take up space. Have boundaries. Say no. Be difficult sometimes. Be uncertain sometimes. Be human. The people who leave when you start being real were never going to love the real you anyway. But the people who stay when you start being real, those are your people. Those are the ones who are capable of actual love, not just appreciation for your performance. Every time you choose authenticity over people-pleasing, you're filtering out the people who can't handle the real you and attracting the people who can. And yes, some people will leave, but the ones who stay are actually choosing you, not the fantasy version of you. And that's the only kind of connection worth having. The fifth pattern keeping you alone is the fear of commitment masquerading as freedom. You tell yourself you're independent. You tell yourself you don't want to be tied down. You tell yourself you're just waiting for the right person. But what's actually happening is that you're terrified of making a choice that's permanent. You're terrified of a future where you look back and realize you chose wrong. You're terrified of the vulnerability required to truly commit to someone. So instead, you keep 1 foot in and 1 foot out of every relationship. You don't introduce them to your family. You don't talk about future plans. You don't fully integrate your life with theirs. You keep your options open. You keep other people on the back burner. You're always looking for the next option because committing to this person might mean missing out on someone better. And people can feel this. They can feel that you're not all in. They can feel that you're holding back. They can feel that they're not actually your choice. They're your option. And eventually, they stop trying. Here's the brutal truth. Commitment is the price of real love. You cannot have deep, lasting, meaningful connection while keeping your escape route open. You cannot be truly intimate with someone while still looking for someone else. You cannot build a future with someone while refusing to make a real choice. Real love requires you to put down your sword, lower your shield, and say, I choose you, even though you could hurt me, even though you might leave me, even though this might not work out. I'm choosing you anyway. Most people aren't willing to do this. Most people want the benefits of commitment, the companionship, the intimacy, the security, without the vulnerability of actual commitment. But that's not how it works. Commitment and vulnerability are the price of admission to real love. You can't get one without the other. Here's what you need to understand. Choosing someone is not a failure. Committing to someone is not a loss. Saying, this is my person, is not closing the door to your life. It's actually opening the door to a life you can't have alone. Because there are experiences, intimacy levels, growth opportunities, and kinds of joy that only exist inside committed partnership. You can't experience them alone. You can't experience them half in and half out. You can only experience them when you're fully committed to another person. So the question is, are you willing to make a real choice? Are you willing to find someone good enough and then make them great by committing fully? Or are you going to keep waiting for perfect while remaining alone? Because that's the actual choice in front of you, commitment or loneliness, real love or the illusion of freedom while actually trapped in isolation. The sixth pattern keeping you alone is that you're not being truly authentic in your relationships. This is different from people-pleasing because people-pleasers are actively trying to be what others want. Authenticity deficit is more subtle. It's where you're not showing your full self, your weird self, your messy self, your vulnerable self. You're showing a curated version. You're performing a version of yourself that you think is acceptable. You're filtering out the parts that you think are too much. Your humor that's a little too dark. Your interests that are a little too nerdy. Your dreams that are a little too big. Your insecurities that are a little too deep. Your past that's a little too complicated. So the person you're dating is connecting with a 70% version of you, and they're making a relationship decision based on that 70%. And when they eventually see the full 100%, all the weird, all the mess, all the depth, they're not equipped to handle it because they didn't sign up for that. Real intimacy only happens when both people are showing their full selves, not just parts, not just the acceptable parts, the whole thing, your darkness and your light, your ambitions and your fears, your humor and your insecurity, your strength and your need. When two people are showing their full selves to each other, something shifts. There's a depth and a resonance that can't exist when people are performing. This is why the best relationships often start with a moment where both people accidentally drop their masks at the same time. They both say something weird or vulnerable or honest, and instead of running away, the other person goes, "Oh, thank God, I thought I was the only one." And suddenly both people feel seen, and being seen is the most powerful feeling in the world. It's the antidote to loneliness. The way to get there is simple but not easy. Be willing to be weird before you're sure it's safe. Show your real self before it's approved. Laugh at your own jokes even if nobody else does. Talk about your real dreams, even if someone might judge them. Share your actual struggles, not the sanitized version. Let people see your doubt, your fear, your need for connection. This is vulnerable. This is risky. You might get rejected. But you know what? If you do get rejected for being authentically you, that means they rejected someone they weren't actually compatible with anyway. So you filtered them out early. And the people who respond to your authenticity, who laugh at your weird jokes, who are interested in your real dreams, who respect your vulnerability, those are your people. Those are the ones who can actually love you. So stop curating, stop performing, start being real. Shalom, my friends. You now understand the 7 patterns that are keeping you alone and preventing real love from entering your life. These aren't character flaws. These aren't permanent conditions. These are learned patterns that were installed for a reason, and they can be unlearned if you're willing to do the work. You understand that the walls you built protected you, but also isolated you. You understand that your attachment style might be pulling people away, even when you desperately want them close. You understand that your unrealistic expectations are keeping you from seeing the real people in front of you. You understand that people-pleasing erases the actual you that someone could love. You understand that fear of commitment is disguised as freedom, but actually leads to loneliness. You understand that inauthenticity prevents the deep connection you actually crave. And you understand that self-love is not selfish. It's the foundation of real love with another person. These are not theoretical concepts. These are patterns active in your life right now, in this moment, determining whether you stay alone or whether you finally let someone in. But here's the most crucial thing. Understanding these patterns is still not enough. Everyone understands intellectually why they're alone. The question is, are you actually going to change? Because change is uncomfortable. Change means doing things differently than you've always done them. Change means taking risks. Change means being vulnerable. Change means potentially being rejected. Most people would rather stay alone than experience that discomfort. So they watch videos like this, they feel inspired for a moment, and then they go right back to the same patterns. And they'll keep doing that until they finally reach a breaking point where the pain of loneliness is greater than the pain of change. I'm hoping you reach that breaking point right now, in this moment. I'm hoping you decide that enough is enough. I'm hoping you decide that you're willing to do the work. So here's your challenge. Pick one of these 7 patterns that resonates most strongly with you. The one that makes you feel seen. The one that explains why your relationships keep ending. The one that you've been avoiding facing. Now identify one small action you can take this week to start breaking that pattern. Just one. If you have walls, have one vulnerable conversation with someone you trust. If you're avoidant, stay in a slightly uncomfortable situation instead of running. If you have unrealistic expectations, go on a date with someone who's not perfect, but who's real. If you're a people pleaser, say no to something or express an unpopular opinion. If you can't commit, make a small commitment and keep it. If you're inauthentic, share something real about yourself. If you lack self-love, keep one promise to yourself, just one action, and then watch what happens. Your life will start to shift, Not dramatically at first, but noticeably. In 30 days, you'll feel different. In 90 days, people will notice the shift in you. In a year, your entire relationship landscape will be different, but it only starts if you take action. It only starts if you decide that being alone is no longer an option. The connection you're looking for is waiting for you. But you have to be willing to step out of the patterns that are keeping you from it. Shalom.